change isn't just inevitable, it's negotiable. And in order to get what you want, whether it's a new team restructure, a new project that needs to be adopted, or a new technology, it's the same as negotiating a deal. You need to think about all the components around you. So I'm going to break it down today to think about how to get what you want when change is happening. So stay right where you are. Welcome to How to Get What You Want. This podcast is for driven women ready to claim their goals and navigate their careers with clarity and confidence. Join me as we explore real stories, tools, and strategies to help you steer your career exactly where you want to go. Let's get started on helping you get what you want. Welcome. I'm so glad that you made the choice to get what you want. That's what we're here to talk about today. Whether it's a new job, more money, leading the new project, everything that we want is around the corner, but we need to be clear and adopt a negotiator mindset to get there. So today we're going to talk about that change. Change is happening in corporate environments everywhere. In fact, I looked up because I was like, I have been hearing from my clients all year, especially in 2024, and as we go into the next year, that change is happening more frequently. I looked online to look at some research around this, and sure enough, a survey of 1,200 executives revealed that 85% say they've observed a significant increase in organizational change projects over the last 5 years. And it's becoming more and more rapid. In fact, they say that they're anticipating that change is going to continue and escalate. And Accenture, in their Pulse of Change Index, reported a 183% increase in the rate of change over the past 4 years, with a 33% rise just the past year. They're saying that 88% of leaders anticipate that there's going to be faster change in 2024 and beyond. So change is just our norm. And I hate to say that because it's something that just sounds so cliche sometimes, but what it means is executives, leaders need to figure out how to embrace change. And we commonly think that it starts at the top. That's our belief, that it starts at the top and it's decided, everything's decided by the leaders up there, all the details of the change. But the truth is that at every level, there needs to be buy-in and adoption, and that happens at an individual level. It's very personal how we go through it and how we choose to negotiate. Because if it's happening to us and we're affected, we may believe that we don't have any say in what is next for us. So we might just sit and wait. And if it's happening to the people that report to us, it's the same as true. We're waiting for something to happen because we believe that there's this master plan. And it's typically not the case. A change is made, but the ripples are not fully defined, thought through, decided on. So with change, that's why it's such a disruptive time when change happens, because everybody feels it differently at every level. Everybody has different assumptions associated to it, and it takes time to figure those things out. It's about how can I be as agile as I can in those moments. McKinsey and Company showed that 70% of organizational changes fail, and that's because there's a lack of a buy-in and alignment. So those conversations don't happen. People feel the change, people feel the anxiety, but nobody is taking control. Nobody's negotiating what needs to happen next. Negotiating change effectively can increase significantly the likelihood of a success. And it's not a one and done. You don't just get the announcement, you read it, and you're like, okay, that's what we have to do. That's what's going to happen. That's not how it happened. So there's lots of frameworks. There's a lot of ways to look at change and be aware of it. But the first aspect of it is to really understand that it's going to be happening all the time. Not everything is figured out. The more that you can be a part of it, the better. And when you view it as a negotiation, instead of this is what we're doing, you can look at how do you build consensus? How do you address resistance? And how do you move through in order to find some success for the overall organization. I'm going to go into some stories, give you some tips to think about. And remember, this is happening all the time around us. So it's important to consider at what point you're in flux now. Consider how you're going to identify when it comes up for you in the future. And what are you going to negotiate to get what you want, to get what your team wants in order to maneuver and navigate and negotiate in the way that you need to? Hey, Susie here. Thought I'd pop in. I wanted to let you know I've been an executive coach for over a decade. I work with executives and they call me their silent partner because I help them increase their confidence when they're facing really difficult decisions. If you'd like to see if we're a good fit, head over to susietalmanchuck.com and fill out an application. I'd love to hear from you. I see examples of this in every conversation every week that I have in the organizations that I work. So it wasn't hard for me to find so many examples to share today. And I'm actually going to share two different stories because it's really interesting how the organization responds. And the first one is I work with a guy, Manny, who was both the organization and he both decided that it was time for him to move on. And he was in the C-suite and he and I worked closely together. So I was one of the first calls that he made. Nobody knows that we're close. And so even though I am an executive coach, I'm not his executive coach, but I helped him work through, how to get his head on straight and what he needed to do to be really objective in his next decision making and his next steps that he's going to take. So this is a big change to the organization. Well, I know a lot of people within the organization, and because they didn't know the tie, they didn't know that I knew what was going on. And it was interesting to talk to a variety of people who assumed that so much had been decided. What I knew from Manny is they didn't have a plan. He didn't even know what his last day was going to be. They didn't know where his teams were going to report to. So there was so much unknown. And then when it started leaking out to the organization, the people I talked to were saying, I'm just going to wait to see what their plan is. I have a lot of questions. I'm waiting for those conversations so I can ask all the questions that I have. What they weren't realizing is a lot of it was not settled yet. So some people were smart enough to sit back, ask a lot of questions, and to identify what was understood, what was fully vetted, where there might be places to negotiate. And some people just waited to hear and were emotionally distraught because Manny was very well liked. So they were also a little bit off kilter. So some people I talked to, I helped them think through who did they need to connect with? How do they want to position what they wanted to take over or how they could provide value during this time? Some of them didn't know the senior team that was going to be likely their new boss or somebody from that group was going to be their boss. So this was a great opportunity for them to connect with them and help them understand the value they bring, not assume that they know, because so much was still unknown. Those leaders at the top really needed the help of the people from below to help them understand where are the holes, where are the things that they didn't want to drop. And they also wanted to make sure that they had the buy-in of the people that were on Manny's teams because they needed to make sure that business as usual felt that way and that they didn't lose a lot of time because people had to deal with the change. So they needed to give them that voice. So it was really interesting to watch that because as people from below, instead of just waiting to see what happens, started engaging and negotiating what was important to them to get what they wanted to help people understand where they fit. They gave themselves that voice. The lesson here is to zoom out and look at what is in your control, what may not be known yet. One of the people I talked to, I said, just spend more time listening. Listen to the answers that other people had. Anticipate and listen between kind of the nuances to try to figure out what they know and what they don't know yet. Super interesting. It doesn't mean just because they make a big organizational change that they have it all figured out. So don't assume that. There's still place to negotiate. The second example is a friend of mine, Jennifer. She was implementing a new software within the whole organization, and it was something that they had to do. So she went into all the meetings, every conversation with the edict that we will do this. And she was under a short time frame. The vendor was saying it should take 9 months. She had 6. So she, in her mind, didn't believe she had time to try to gain influence, to really sell it in, to get people's ideas. Her strategy was, I'm going to have status meetings. I'm going to tell you what you needed to do, and we're going to implement this. And she didn't do it from the point of being a dictator. She didn't like that. She believed that everybody understood that this was something they had to do. There was no choice in it. And so she was just going to make sure that everybody aligned and got in line, basically, and made sure that the launch of the software was successful. Well, guess what? It wasn't. Not only did they not hit the 6 months, they didn't hit the 9 months. And Jennifer was no longer with the organization because it was her leadership that was the one that they basically said, this didn't work. And so she was gone. Now I've talked to Jennifer. I saw some of what had happened, and what I observed was she didn't get the buy-in. She didn't have the time. I understand why she didn't do that, but just simple acts like going into those first meetings and identifying and letting people have a voice about what their concerns are. What are their questions? What are the pitfalls? What are the things that we need to anticipate that we aren't thinking about? Asking questions, especially within the whole organization. A leader doesn't have those optics and to see it from a lot of different vantage points. Unveiling those can allow those questions to be answered, but it also allows those people to have their voice heard. And so those people are more likely, actually, the research shows if people feel a part of the process, they're 5 times more likely to be fully bought in. So Jennifer did not get the buy-in from the individuals. She may have thought innately that she needed to, but she didn't have the time. Unfortunately, the consequence was she lost her job because of it, because the company had to put it on somebody, and her leadership didn't allow her to. She should have negotiated more time. She should have looked at what she could control, and she should have really thought about and take time to think about, how do I get the buy-in from people? How do I make their voice be heard? And also, this was a big change. So some people well, a lot of people, majority of people don't like change. Once they know how things are done, they like to keep it status quo. Not addressing that idea that people are resistant to change left unmet needs unaddressed. And those barriers turned people into opposition instead of cooperating. So change is a tricky thing. It's happening all around all the time, but it's not just being a good leader to get people through, to check the boxes, to be a good product owner or project owner. It's about thinking about the people, having situational awareness around getting buy-in, getting people's voices heard. How do you get them to row together, but in a way that they're going to collaborate together? You want to use the best minds. This is such a tricky topic, but it's super interesting. Of course, I would say that taking a negotiation lens is the key. Adopting this mindset helps you. And so these tips will be influenced by that perspective for sure. But it is a negotiation. And since it's happening all the time, change is happening, I want you to have some awareness, and I'll challenge you to think about what change is happening around you. It's easy to identify organizational changes, adopting a new software, but change is shifting a team member, bringing somebody new on. That changes the whole chemistry of the team. And that change offers an opportunity to really gauge engagement, to see where people are, how they're doing, but also to understand that change takes people different durations to get comfortable with. And sometimes change happens so quickly, and senior leaders will live with change for so much time that by the time they're ready to announce the change, they've kept it stifled so long that they're like, oh, thank goodness. Let's write this great communication and then we're done. And people need to have it repeated and help people to understand. So thinking about that and everybody doing it differently, everybody needing a different dose of understanding, being listened to, being heard, those are all aspects of being a good leader during change. But the first tip I'm going to give you is aligned very well with negotiation, and it's having a plan. When change is happening or you see it happening, take some time to really think about, how am I going to go into this? How am I going to build the influence? Do I have the influence to really be successful here? If not, who are the stakeholders that I need to be a part of this too? How am I going to get the buy-in from the team as I go along in the first meeting and ongoing? Have a plan to really think about, how are you going to build the trust so that you can get people to get on board as soon as possible, get them to understand it. So it's taking that time to get ready instead of just jumping in. So maybe it's scheduling one-on-one or team discussions once you have an idea, just to gather insights to understand where people are with this project that's upcoming before it even starts. Even people that aren't going to be directly involved in it, getting their perspective can be really helpful. So a listening tour in your preparation can be super helpful. The second tip is to really think about, how do you frame the shared goals? How do you get alignment so that people understand their place in the project? What is their part of it? And what is the overall goal for the organization, for the team that's running it? Being really clear to define that for everybody, help everybody to understand their voice and how they communicate that. How are we going to structure the ongoing connection points, the updates? What do people see as the challenges? Be really open to shifting that. They say that in order to get that buy-in, people have to feel that they're a part of something that is not all figured out yet. So don't go in saying, here's our plan, now we have to execute. Say, here's an idea of how I think we should move about. We have 9 months. This is the cadence, I think. What do you think? When you get the buy-in from people, they're more likely to be a part of it. And they're getting their voice started and in the room will increase their contribution and collaboration to the overall team. So it's really important. So that's number 2. Number 3 is, as you go into it, it's not just that first meeting that's important. It's the regular cadence and helping the team to reunite about the wins that they're having. It can be so daunting during change to know where you are and if you're being successful. So helping people see where they've come from, understanding what successes they've had, helps them to feel motivated. We all get discouraged when we don't understand where we are, or we might feel like, oh, this is hard. But if you can take the time to celebrate wins, that can continue to reinforce where the team is together, but it also can ignite that passion, that energy. You can share metrics. You can share testimonials from people of what they've experienced or things that they're excited about, even the updates to the senior team about the change. The thing about change is, it feels like you just have to announce it, but you need to be in it in the long term and really assess how people are. It's not just when we integrate this software. It's, how is the team feeling about this? Once it's done, the project's done, do we have the buy-in? Do we have people excited about it? Are the users understanding? Who do we need to bring in? Having the momentum shared across the organization can be really powerful. So those tips again, start by preparing for how you're going to get the buy-in, who you're going to go to, how do you get feedback, and start having the meetings before the meetings to understand what are the concerns around the table, not literally, but around the organization. 2 is really make sure with that team that's going to be working on going in the change or is going to experience the change, to understand what the overall goals are. Help them see the future, help them understand where you're going, and even being really clear about What is the timing for this? So everybody knows what they're working against. And then the third is to really reinforce momentum along the way, help people see the wins, help them see where they've come from. Don't forget that change takes all the way. It's not just the first meeting and the last meeting. It's continuing the momentum and thinking about what the people around the table need, not just the project, the people around the table as individuals or collective to keep the motivation, to keep the energy, and to keep the trust within that group. So I want you to think about a recent time or upcoming change that's going to happen within your team or your organization and consider, how can you listen more? How can you negotiate shared goals? And then how will you reinforce the small wins along the way? Adopting a negotiator mindset will give you a outline to use to think about how to get what you want with the best possible outcome so you have success for you, for the team, and the organization. So if you want to get more insights about how to get what you want through adopting a negotiator mindset, join our newsletter. It's all about stories and tips to take this conversation further, to get that mindset shift so that you can be more effective in every situation that you face every day. And when people see it, they go, oh my gosh, I knew it was right and true that negotiation happens around us, but I never knew how true that was. I'm so glad you made the choice to be here today. I hope you'll join our community. Go to negotiationlove.com. That's where you can find all the information you need and sign up there. Remember that negotiation is more than a skill, to mindset. Until next time.